Hey guys, I hope you are doing well with this coronavirus outbreak. I figured that I would try and make some videos for you guys of things that we would learn in class, but that I can't obviously teach in class. And so for today, I'm going to show you how to make some pasta sauce. And so the reason why I decided to do pasta sauce is because we went to the store to try and buy some, and there wasn't any pasta sauce. And so this is a pretty easy recipe that just calls for a lot of ingredients. So I'm going to show you what you need in order to do this recipe. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need some tomato sauce or tomato paste. You're going to need some Worcestershire sauce. Looks like this. You're going to need some lemon juice, like that. Some soy sauce. You're going to need garlic. Can't go wrong with garlic. And you're going to need basil, some bay leaves. Now, keep in mind that when you use bay leaves, you don't want to eat the bay leaves. It's really gross because they don't soften up or anything. So it's like eating dry cardboard that tastes like herbs. So you'll take those out once we get through this recipe. You'll need red pepper flakes, some oregano, salt right there, and you're going to need some brown sugar. You will also need some tomatoes, some red peppers, green peppers, and onions, and I'll go into detail about those. I have the recipe for you. I'm going to show you the recipe so you can have it. And so those are some of the things that you're going to need to start out with this pasta recipe. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to need to wash your veggies. Now, I cannot stress how important it is to wash your vegetables. Even without a virus or an outbreak, you want to wash them because you never know where they've been or who's touched them or whatever. There might be dirt on them. There could be all sorts of things on them. And so what I do is I use like Dawn dish soap or some liquid dish soap that's good for the environment because you don't want anything bad on your fruits and veggies when you wash them. So I fill the sink up and then I wash them by hand, each one, and then I'll rinse it here and then I put them out on the table here. Some other things that you're going to need for this is you're going to need a pot of just water. This is for the tomatoes. It's something you call blanching, and we'll talk about that. You'll need a fry pan with some oil. You'll need a big pot to put it all in to let it simmer once you're done mixing it. And then some knives and spoons, and I like to have a pot here to put tomatoes and things once I'm done blanching them. I put them in here and transport them places. It just makes it easier than doing it one by one. Also a cutting board. Okay, so here is the recipe that I'm using. It's a homemade pasta sauce. You can see all the ingredients there, and you can see all the amounts that they need to go into. Just keep in mind that as we've learned, there are abbreviations like TBS is for tablespoon. I wrote out all the cups and stuff, but TBS is tablespoon, TSP is teaspoon. And also keep in mind that if you don't have 25 pounds of tomatoes, you can always cut that in half and then make sure that all of your other ingredients are also cut in half. So the first thing that I'm going to do is it calls for onions. Now you don't have to do this. But I like to just because it gives it a little bit more flavor. So I cut up the onions very coarsely. So you look at these, they're pretty big chunks of onion, and that's okay because what we're going to do is later on we're going to put these in a food processor. But what I did here is I cut them up very coarsely, and I'm going to be cutting more up here in just a minute. And then I'll put them in this pan over here, and I'm going to saute them with some oil, some olive oil. And it's going to make it so you have a little bit more of a smoky kind of grilled flavor to your sauce rather than just plain old garden sauce. And you'll want to do that with your onions and your peppers. So again, you need green peppers right here, and you need red peppers. Just like you can see on that recipe too, it calls for 4 and then 2. Well, it calls for 1 large green pepper, but these are quite small. So I just, I'm putting 2 of those in there. And with pasta sauce, with any sauces that you make, it's very relative. You don't have to necessarily add peppers and stuff if you don't like them. You can kind of add whatever you want to make that flavor that you're looking for in your sauce. Okay guys, so I have finished cutting up all the onions, peppers, and I've put them in this pan here. You can see that they're pretty big chunks, and that's just because, again, like I said, you're going to be cooking them a little bit just to get the flavor in, and then you're going to put them in a food processor. And as you process them, they will either be non-existent, just kind of a mush, or they'll be very, very small pieces, so you won't be eating giant chunks of pepper and onion. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is we are going to turn on this pot of boiling water. We're going to turn it on high. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we are blanching tomatoes. Now blanching tomatoes is a way that you can get a tomato and you can get the skin off of the tomato in an easy way, other than like cutting the skin off or dealing with it, because no one wants to eat a giant chunk of skin in some pasta sauce. So what we do is we take the tomatoes once the water is boiling, and we put it in the boiling water for about 30 seconds or a minute, depending on what your preference is. And what happens is the hot water actually makes the cells of the fruit expand, which splits the fruit. And then as you put them in cold water, the fruit will then shrink and the skin will be cracked and peeled, and then it's easy to just kind of slough the skin off. So that's what the blanching process is, and that's what we're going to be doing next. Okay guys, so while we're waiting for the water to boil to blanch the tomatoes, I have actually turned on the stove for the peppers and onions, and I put it on medium. As you can see, it's on medium because it's going to take a little while for this to heat up, and you want it to be able to cook enough that it can get the seasonings and flavors of these peppers and onions into this, but you do not want it to overcook. So make sure that if you do two things at once, that you keep track of what you are doing, because it can get a little bit overwhelming when this is cooking and your water's boiling and you're blanching tomatoes. You don't want to get overwhelmed because you don't want anything to burn. If it burns, you have to start over and it sucks. But I also wanted to reiterate that when you wash your fruits and your veggies for anything, you need to make sure that they are rinsed. You do not want any kind of soap or suds in your dish that you're making, because that can be really gross and disturbing. Also, you don't want soap in it. So just make sure you rinse everything the best that you can, and keep it clean. Make sure you continually wash your hands, especially if you decide to do other things at this time, like, I don't know, water plants or cooked chicken or something. You want to make sure that all of your stations are clean, because different foods can hold different bacteria and different sicknesses and things that will just not make you feel good if you contaminate things. So make sure you constantly wash your hands and the surfaces that you're using. Alright guys, so our tomatoes are ready. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab some tomatoes here from the table, and I'm going to show you how to blanch these tomatoes so that we can get the skins off them. Because this actually is one of the longer processes that you actually have to sit here and do stuff with. So we're going to do that real quick, and I'm going to show you what to do. Now, I'm going to flip my camera around the best that I can. I hope this works. So you can see that I have this boiling pot of water, and my veggies are starting to cook, so I've been continually tossing them around so they don't burn. So this next part is really important, that you do not put your hands in the boiling water. It's so important that you don't do that. You are welcome to use a spoon, okay? But for my purpose, I'm just going to be doing this with one hand. I would not recommend it. Please do not do this with one hand. You will probably get burnt, as I'm sure I will too. But it's hard to do that while filming and cooking at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my hand, and I'm going to bring the tomato over here, and I'm going to gently drop it in the pot of water while it's boiling. Now you can put quite a few tomatoes in here. You don't want to do too many because you want them to submerge in the water, and then they will boil. And as they boil, you will see that their skins will start to split. And we'll come back to this in just a second. But I did want to talk about the different kinds of tomatoes that we're using. So we're using these tomatoes here, called an early girl tomato. These early girl tomatoes are very fleshy, but they do have a bit of juice in them, so it makes the sauce more saucy and not so thick, I guess you could say. I'm also using Roma tomatoes. Roma tomatoes are really good for salsas and things that need a little bit more thickness in the sauce. So I'm using a combination of both. You really can use any kind of tomato you want. It's just up to your complete preference. It doesn't quite matter. I also want... I need to stir my veggies before I burn them. Like I told you is a concern. So I'm stirring my vegetables really quick because I don't want them to overcook. You just want a little bit of that flavoring in there to make it pop. Now, let's go back to our tomatoes because they're actually doing something kind of cool. Now, as you can see, this large tomato here, you can physically see the skin peeling off. This is perfect. It's exactly what we need. And once they start to do that, once you see a couple tomatoes with the skins starting to peel off, you can take all of them out. So for example, this one doesn't have any skin peeling on it. That's okay because we can deal with that later in the cold water that we're putting in the sink. So just take them out very carefully, one by one. Leave your pot boiling with water. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these tomatoes and we're going to bring them over to the sink because I filled it up with cold water. There's already some in there. You can see that the skin's starting to come off of them. That's perfect. It's exactly what you want. And then you just dump the tomatoes in there. And you're going to let them sit. You don't want to use those right away because they're going to be really hot. So if you pick them up, they're going to burn your hands. So let them sit in the ice cold water for a little while. And then just repeat this process over and over until all your tomatoes, or most of your tomatoes, are ready to be peeled. Okay? And then I will show you the next step once I've peeled all these tomatoes and how to peel them. Okay? Alright, so now that we have blanched our tomatoes, we need to peel them. So I have a lovely assistant. His name is Corey. He's not wanting to be on camera at the moment, but he's filming for me. So what you do is you grab the tomatoes and you can see that the skin's coming off. So if you come over here, what I want you to do is be really careful. I use a paring knife. Now the paring knife helps get inside. So you need to core the tomato because it's got this nasty little core. You don't want that in your pasta sauce. So you're going to want to gently carve it out. Now be very careful. If you are not good with knives, I would suggest you not use them aggressively or have a parent with you. And then you just peel the skin off like this. See how easy it comes off after blanching? If your tomato skin's not coming off, you might need to blanch your tomatoes just a little bit longer. Then I'm going to cut them in half really carefully. Again, be very careful with your knife. And then we're going to put them, on the counter. We're going to put them in a blender like this. And then we'll blend them up and we'll get some tomato sauce going. Alright guys, so we are almost done with preparing our pasta sauce before we have to cook it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that I have some tomatoes in here that need to be blended. So I haven't blended these ones for a specific purpose, and that's because my veggies over here, as you can see, they've kind of shrunk down a little bit. They've got some yellow color. This means that they've cooked enough, so I'm going to turn the burner off. Let them sit there for just a second while we're talking. And what I'll do is I'll put these veggies in with the tomatoes, and then it'll be easier to blend them all up and to process it. So for us at our house, we like to have, we don't like big chunks in the pasta, so we're going to blend it all together. So we still get the flavor, but just not going to get the big chunks. But I did want to show you what I did with the rest of the tomatoes because I blended all the other tomatoes and I put them in a big pot on the stove right here. So all this is just those ground up tomatoes. The burner's not on yet because I wanted to make sure I add all the ingredients with you guys watching. And then we'll turn it on and then you just let it simmer for a really long time and we'll talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this lid on this blender real quick. Make sure it's sealed and then blend it. Okay, so it makes like a paste there. Take the lid off. This is a lot harder doing it one-handed than I thought it would be. And then I'm going to get a little board like this to put my veggies on so it doesn't burn the table. You don't want to burn your table because it's a hot pan. And I'm going to bring my veggies, hold up just a second, I'm going to bring my veggies as best as I can this direction. And then get a measuring cup because it will be easier to do it that way. Sorry. And I'm going to scoop up my veggies like this. And I'm just going to put them in with this tomato mix. Okay, just like that. Doesn't matter that it's hot. Just going to put them right on in there. And then when you blend it, all the flavors of these onions and peppers will go into the tomato sauce. And then when I'm done blending it, I'll just put it in that big pot on the table. Sorry, on the stove that I showed you. And I'll show you what we are going to do next. Okay? Okay, so we have all of our stuff together in pots, but we have a little bit of a problem. As you can see, this pot is completely full, so I won't even be able to add the other ingredients. So what I've done is I've gotten another pot here. What I'm going to do is add all the seasonings and stuff, and then I will take this spoon right here, and I'm going to ladle out some of this stuff into the other pot. And then as it boils down, there'll be more room to put it all in this pot at the end. So what I wanted to show you is that in here I already have the tomato paste or tomato sauce. I use tomato sauce, and then the brown sugar. But we also want to add our soy sauce and our Worcestershire sauce. So you'll put that in there like this. Okay. And then we have lemon juice right here that we will then put in. We have our salt that we're going to put in. And we have all the seasonings and herbs. So this is like the basil and the oregano and the red pepper flakes. You can't really see all of it, but it really is all in there, I promise. And then you pour that in. And then you need to do all the garlic. So I have this big tub of garlic that I am going to use instead of cloves of garlic. And if you look on the back of these, it'll tell you how many teaspoons or half teaspoons equal 1 clove of garlic. So we need 10 for our recipe, and that's 1 half a teaspoon is going to equal 1 clove of garlic. So we need 10 of these. So I'm just going to bring it over here and roughly measure out 10. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so our garlic is now done. We'll move it to the side. I have my bay leaves here. You'll want to put those in as well. Just make sure that when you put them in jars and whatnot, which I'll show you later, you take those out because you don't want them in there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that we just put in this pot, and I'm going to ladle it out into this pot. And it's not really a big deal that I'm not getting the right necessarily mixtures in both pots, because this is going to cook down after a while. All the moisture in it's going to come out, and then we can combine it all into one pot, so it's not a big issue. But for this purpose, we're going to have to take them out of these pots and combine them together. So just make sure that you remembered you did that, so when you, when you make your pasta sauce and put it on your noodles, you don't just only get tomatoes and peppers or only seasonings and herbs. Okay, so we will ladle those off, and then we're going to turn these on to very, very low. You do not want to turn them on high because tomatoes burn really easily, and you definitely don't want your tomatoes to burn. And you're going to let that simmer for quite a while, and I'll be here every step of the way in order for you to know exactly how long they need to simmer for. As you guys can see, we are boiling down the tomatoes and the sauce. Nice little boil there. And what this is doing is you can see the steam all coming off the top here. That's just boiling down all the moisture so that eventually we'll be able to add this pot to this one and have all our seasonings in together. So just make sure that you continually stir it. You want to stir this very regularly because the tomatoes will burn on the bottom. So make sure you stir it. Give it a couple good stirs. Make sure it's not sticking on the bottom. If it is sticking on the bottom, make sure you turn down your heat. on your oven, and just makes your house smell amazing. So keep up this process for quite a while, and let it keep going. Last step, guys, all we need to do is let this simmer. So you're gonna let it simmer for a really long time. In fact, like 4 or 5 hours, until it gets to the consistency of pasta sauce. Then what you're gonna do is, those of you who are in my home economics class, you already know how to process vegetables and tomatoes and stuff, how to put them in jars. So you'll ladle them in jars, leave a little bit of space up here at the top when you put your sealers and rings on, and then you will bath them for 40 minutes, let them boil, cook, take them out of the water once that time is up, and then you can keep these pasta sauces for about a year or more in your food storage so that you can use them whenever. So that ends this video. Hopefully it wasn't super boring for you. I know this is a new way of learning at home how to do things in school, but if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Last step, guys, all we need to do is let this simmer. So you're gonna let it simmer for a really long time. In fact, like 4 or 5 hours, until it gets to the consistency of pasta sauce. Then what you're gonna do is, those of you who are in my home economics class, you already know how to process vegetables and tomatoes and stuff, how to put them in jars. So you'll ladle them in jars, leave a little bit of space up here at the top when you put your sealers and rings on, and then you will bath them for 40 minutes, let them boil, cook, take them out of the water once that time is up, and then you can keep these pasta sauces for about a year or more in your food storage so that you can use them whenever. So that ends this video. Hopefully it wasn't super boring for you. I know this is a new way of learning at home how to do things in school, but if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and hopefully you enjoyed this.